here's the problem. You're sitting out there and there's a beautiful waterfall in front of you. You say, oh, I'd like to make a sketch of that. And your eye is caught to the moving water, and we want to draw what we're the most interested in, which is this beautiful water. And so you want to draw the waterfall, and so you start kind of saying, all right, the water is kind of coming down here, and then splashes over into these rocks over here, and then more comes down there, and then it kind of comes out into a pool, and the problem is that the more that I draw the waterfall, the darker the waterfall becomes, because I'm drawing with my graphite pencil or my pen. So when I'm drawing the waterfall and sketching what I'm the most interested in, the more I do that, the darker I make the brightest, whitest thing in front of me. And so the secret to draw the waterfall is not to draw the waterfall. Draw a bird instead. Okay, no. There you go. No, but really, we're going to draw this waterfall by not drawing the waterfall. What we're going to do is draw the rocks and the shapes around the waterfall. And what you then get is the waterfall popping out to you. And the darker the rocks are around the waterfall, the whiter the waterfall is going to appear. So it's a really fun place to kind of play with the idea of contrast, the difference between light and dark. And there's that really difficult thing of not drawing the waterfall itself. And I'm not sure how fast the water is running down here. So I'm going to make a waterfall up out of my head. We'll see if any of these ideas will apply to the waterfall which we're about to see. And I think you'll really, really like Carson Falls. So what I do with my non-photo blue pencil, and I'm going to pretend now that this is my non-photo blue pencil, is I will roughly block in the shape of the waterfall as I see it. And here I'm sort of looking at what is the shape of this waterfall. Then instead of drawing that water in there, it starts to feel like a waterfall as very often where water splashes down, it makes the rocks that are next to that darker, but it starts to feel like a little waterfall as see the waterfall starting to appear. All right. And here's a little place where this waterfall splits. It's a rock there. And there is because it is dark next to this waterfall, that makes the waterfall itself pop out as white. So I'm working around the waterfall. Now it comes into a plunge pool at the base of the waterfall. Right? And what I want to do is get the viewer, their brain, to switch from we have water that is pouring down here to now water coming out this way in a flat pool. Right? And my little plunge pool is going to be right here at the base. And very often where the water comes down, it's carrying a lot of bubbles into it, makes sort of a white frothy area right at the base of the waterfall. The further you get away from that waterfall, that's where you start to see the darker water. So often right where this comes down and hits that pool, there's going to be an area there that is going to be white. But to make this area here feel like it is a flat surface of water, any marks that I make with my pencil or my pen, I'm going to keep those marks really horizontal. So if any of those marks show up, it's going to suggest that, this is a flat plane here. Do you remember when we were doing our workshop the other day and we're carving around the shape of the deer? If you were here for that, our pencil marks were following the planes of the object that we were drawing. So I'm going to do the same thing here, that any marks out here, because these are now flat, that suggests that here you're going from rocks that are coming down like this. Now we have a flat surface that's coming out like that. So that you can even suggest that if your pencil lines, if you have everything with sort of smooth gray tones, this doesn't apply. But if your pencil lines are showing up, then I want that to, my pencil marks to show that actually right in here is where we're going to change the angle of that water. So that is just a little bit of a thought on drawing and sketching waterfalls. Grab another marker here. There we go. One last thing I'm noticing, I've got a little mark up here at the top of my waterfall that's at an angle. I don't want that, because water is going to come over a lip horizontally. So I'm going to just suggest that this is like that. I think this might be water. There we go. There we go. There is a few thoughts on drawing a waterfall. Of course, if you have, white paint or something like that, you can draw the waterfall itself. But generally, I find myself kind of working around the waterfall. In places where there's a rock in the middle of a cascade that's coming down, that will split the stream. And so, if I have that, for instance, rock right here, it might make a place here where that stream gets split. Maybe they sometimes will come apart, come back together. The shapes to put into your waterfall are going to be dictated by what you're really looking at. If at first when you're looking at it, it feels overwhelming, what I suggest you do is just to squint at it. Squint at the waterfall, and then take your pencil and with your eyes squinting, so you're blurring out the detail, kind of draw in the air the basic shapes of what you're seeing. It's going to make, some sort of branching and connecting abstract shape. Believe the waterfall, believe what you see. And then translate that shape down to your piece of paper. I first block that in with my blue pencil and then work it out from there. If there is a lot of splash in this area, one last thing, that will often make for a zone in here where there is kind of a big, broad, dark area. So I pay attention to what is the shape of the dark area that is around the waterfall, what is the shape of that waterfall itself. And then you draw the waterfall by not drawing the waterfall. How do you draw bubbles and all the splash in the action? The place with all that bubble and splash in the action is often one of the whitest parts of the waterfall itself. And if we get in there and we start drawing all those bubbles and drawing the splash lines of things coming out, that gets a whole bunch of graphite into the part of the drawing where the waterfall is really, really white. And what I would do is to make a choice. What am I going to choose to show? If I want to show the shape and the trajectories of splash, one way that you could do that is to sort of make a diagram and say, the bubbles are here, this is how far the splash is going. But if I get in there and I start drawing that in with my pencil, it very quickly starts to add a lot of the graphite into the area which we want to be really, really white. One way to think about it is just sort of to squint at it again and realize it's impossible for me to draw everything. Right? I cannot do everything. In any drawing, you're making choices of what you're putting in or not putting in. Right? So here, I am going to make some choices. And it might be that the texture of the bubbles, if I put that in, it's going to mess up my sort of the idea of my contrasts and the light and dark. I can choose not to put that in. If that is something that's really important to me, then I realize that I'm making a choice for that, but I am not going to be able to show other aspects of what this waterfall looks like. And I also am going to suggest that people remember the idea of the landscapito that we looked at on our first field trip. If you're drawing a giant waterfall, that's a lot of dark rocks to fill in. If you're making a little sketch this big of a waterfall, or this big of a waterfall, right, you can really push the darks in, make that waterfall pop out, and you aren't spending the rest of your natural life in there with your pencil trying to get all these rocks to be dark. And if you like the sketch that you did on a small scale, you always can go ahead and do a bigger one, and you're welcome to. But remember, at least for me, very often the small little thumbnail sketches, they kind of just catch an essence or a sense of the place that I'm in. I find often I do one of those and then work out a big elaborate one. I really like the sense that I got in that little sketch even more. So you don't have to get big, fancy, and time-consuming. Try 5 different sketches of the waterfall in different ways. See what works for you. If you keep those small, you can do those in a really short period of time, in a matter of minutes. So let's say there is I can see perhaps a line of trees in here, or a hill that is back here, or perhaps there's a hill back here with some trees behind it. What I'm going to do is, here's my hill coming down, and there's a line of trees that are up on it. Something that will help this is if there is a value change there, that stuff behind, I'm not going to put in quite as dark. I'm going to have that be a little bit lighter. That will help the viewer see that as something that is further behind whatever it is that I'm looking at. Might make this a little bit darker. So it's fine to have other stuff there.
And if you can see some of the water going back in there too, is it possible that you would see? I guess if it was stepping up.
Oh, big... oh, sure. It's going to depend on your angles there.
Yeah.
One good way, when you get really kind of complex shapes of pools where you can see a number of pools, something to look for. One problem that that I get when I'm drawing some of these pools is my brain knows that from the top, this pool, I've got a waterfall that comes down here, and then it's going to come into there'll be a little basin that say has this shape, and then the waterfall will come out here. So this is like a map looking at it from the top. Let's say this pool has this shape. It's really, really, really easy because my brain knows that that is really the shape of it. When I get to drawing that, what I'll do is have, all right, here's my waterfall. My waterfall comes down here and comes into this pool. Oops. And then comes out here. And have this will be dark. What I will have just done is drawn my waterfall from the front view, and this pool that it drops into, I'm drawing that much more in terms of the shape that I know it has, as opposed to the actual shape that I'm seeing from this angle. So it's really easy to kind of over-round these plunge pools. One way to get around that is to, when you're looking at the waterfall, close one eye, and this destroys your 3D vision. You're then looking at just a two-dimensional shape and draw in the air and say to yourself, all right, that waterfall coming down that goes into that plunge pool there, all right, what am I seeing from this angle? I am seeing this very horizontal shape there. I might have something like that. And so be aware of these kind of, oh, I know it's a round pool, and so I draw that. Very often you'll get these sort of weird angular shapes down here. And just believe what the waterfall shows you. But beware of taking the shape that you know it should be and just plopping that in, because this way I have waterfall from straight view, pool from top, then waterfall from straight view, pool from top. Especially with those pools, when we get to the corners of them, we want to do that because we know it has a rounded edge. When you really look at it from the edge where you are, you might see something much more like that. So beware of kind of over-rounding the corners of these plunge pools and making them too broad in this dimension. And it's going to depend on the angle. You'll see more if you're looking down here, those pools, but as you're looking up the waterfall, they're going to